are using maybe the excuse of following precedent to trump the Constitution. And again, I mean, I just can't say it strongly enough. The Constitution has to be preeminent. And this idea of precedent, you know, the problem with precedent is if enough judges decide the same way for a long enough period of time, that becomes precedent.
And then the Constitution is worthless.
Yeah.
Or that whatever they're saying it overrules the Constitution.
So just because a bunch of judges decided the same thing for a long enough period of time, why does that get to trump the Constitution? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a rhetorical question.
Right,
Obviously, it shouldn't.
I don't.
I mean, there is precedent now that wasn't precedent 100 years ago.
Right.
And the precedent changed because judges started to change.
Right.
You know, things that were allowed in our schools, that used to be allowed in our schools, and now are no longer allowed in our schools. Mm-hmm. You know, there's precedent on that now, but that's just because a judge decided, well, we're not going to do it the way we used to do it anymore.
Right.
So.
And so instead of the people changing the rules and the laws, the judges ended up doing that.
Yes.
And some people would say, well, that's a good thing, like with the segregation and human rights, some of these judges went beyond that. So, I mean, that's a mindset out there, and although that was a good thing, that wasn't necessarily the right process to go.
Well, that's the issue. I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't just pick the decisions that you like that a judge made, even though he was overstepping his bounds, but then complain about the decisions a judge makes that you don't like. We have to have consistency. Mm-hmm. I mean, all judges have to do it the same way.
Right.
And they can't take it upon themselves to make up new law.
Yeah. So in light of that, what is your judicial philosophy, or I think other people say it's a temperament, you know, your judicial temperament, you are original, I forgot the word now.
Strict constructionist?
Strict constructionist or original intent. Yeah. You know, where do you fall in line with this?
Well, I'm certainly a strict constructionist. You hear the term strict constructionist versus judicial activist. Mm-hmm. And I'm certainly a strict constructionist. I very much believe that the Constitution is just as relevant today, that the underlying truths that are the foundation for that document apply with equal force today as they did when the Constitution was written. And you read the Constitution today, it's just mind-boggling that the Founding Fathers had the foresight to write a document that still applies today. I mean, you read that document and it's completely relevant today.
Yes.
I mean, it's just, it's amazing.
Well, and we see the battles for this relevance being played out daily in our city councils and in our legislators and in the courts. I mean, because it is so relevant. Yeah. I mean, that battle's going on because, unfortunately, there's enough people out there that don't want the Constitution relevant.
Well, I think I know you were at the candidate forum that the Tea Party put on.
Yeah, and I just want to go in there since you mentioned that. That was the 10th Judicial District had a candidate forum up in Monticello. And so in that regards, the 10th Judicial District is a big area.
These are the counties.
Okay.
Anoka, Chisago, Isanti, Kanabec, Pine, Sherburne, Washington, and Wright counties. So on the east, way to the south, curls up way to the north of the Twin Cities, you know, curls around Hennepin and Ramsey County, and then way over to the west, all the way out almost to St. Cloud.
Okay. And like I said, that meeting was up in Monticello, but I saw your signs today down in Bayport. Yeah. And
Cottage Grove.
Yeah, coming up. You know, they're all over the place. So obviously you got a good following going on. But that's a lot of that's the 6th congressional district.
Yes.
But it's actually bigger than that. I heard.
It is. Yes.
Okay. So that's a big area, and people, you need to. We're going to show this in a lot of these areas, but you need to understand this is a guy you get to vote for. And now the other thing about the meeting up in Monticello. There's 24 candidates running for this seat.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, this is just bizarre to me.
Yes.
And now, how did it happen that there was 24 people running for this seat? How did it get there? Because that's not normal for a general election to have that many people. Usually there's 2 people or
Right.
in a nonpartisan race.
Yes. The sitting judge filed for re-election because, I assume because he was the incumbent, and you know, we'll probably get into this, that the word incumbent appears next to the sitting judge when he or she is up for re-election. In any event, he filed for re-election. Nobody else filed except for his law clerk, who is an attorney and has been his law clerk for, I think, 10 years. She filed for election as well. When the deadline passed, the judge withdrew his name, leaving her as the only one who would have been on the ballot.
Right.
There was a bit of a furor over that, and so she then withdrew her name, which triggered an election law that says that any practicing attorney, any licensed attorney who gets 500 signatures on a petition by a certain deadline, and it was about 4 or 5 days.
Right. It wasn't a long period.
It wasn't
yeah.
a long period.
I think it's 7 days, but yeah.
Okay, but very short period of time. They go directly onto the November 2nd ballot. No primary, and the other thing about it is, obviously nobody expected 24 names. Some of the candidates have simply said, I'm not going to get involved in this, but you cannot get your name off the ballot
Right.
once it's
Okay.
on.
And then, so 24 people are now in the race, whether they want to be or not now.
Right.
And you, the voter, have to figure out, you know, who do I want to vote for? This is shocking here. I'm going to put it up here, but I don't know if you can see this very well, but this is a list of the 24. When you go to your ballot, you're going to see a list of 24 names for judge for seat 3. Okay, and a lot of the judges in this area, they're running unopposed, but all of a sudden, 24 names. That's all right, we don't have to change the camera on that. But just so expect it, otherwise you're going to have a shock and, oh boy, I'm not prepared for this.
Well, in fact,
you only need to know one name anyway, and that's Chris Penwell.
That's actually why I put all the names on there, because I wanted the voters to be shocked now rather than when they go into the voting booth. Now, I did ask, you can see my name there.
You put it big, but on the ballot it's not going to be that big.
I did ask the Secretary of State's office if my name could look like that on the actual ballot, but I haven't heard back from yet.
Yeah. Well, and actually you can go to the Secretary of State's website and go and find out what your ballot is going to look like, and you can do that right now at the Minnesota Secretary of State.
And the names will be randomly shuffled, as I understand it, by precinct.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So each precinct, the list is going to be different.
I believe it's by precinct.
Wow.
So
it won't necessarily be in this order.
Right, right.
So they're going to have to remember your name, Christopher Penwell. Write it down.
I think a lot of people are going to be very overwhelmed and maybe not vote at all. I think that most people are going to be need to be pretty intentional about going in and saying, this is who I'm going to vote for.
Okay. Yeah, well, and most people aren't intentional on the judicial races. They kind of ignore them. But this year, a lot more information's getting out, and I attribute that to, you know, the Tea Party, a lot of work that even I've done, and people like Greg Wurzel, and getting information out and trying to, and now that judges can be endorsed by political parties. And are you endorsed by any party or anything?
I'm endorsed by the Republican Party, yes.
Okay, all right. And now what I heard on that was when they had their endorsement convention, that you kind of, you know, not everybody was prepared for that came there, heard there was endorsement, but you just kind of won a lot of people over.
Yeah, I
kind of
honestly,
rose up and
I've never been involved actively in politics before, never campaigned for anything, never sought any kind of office. I really had no idea what to expect. I had heard before the endorsing convention that there were 2 candidates, former state legislators, who had very, very high name recognition among the delegates.
Right.
And they were clearly the front runners.
Right.
No one had ever heard of me. When I got there, I didn't know a single delegate except my neighbor was there, and I didn't even know she was a delegate until I got there. So I was completely unknown to the delegates. The convention actually took place over 2 nights. So it was a pretty thorough vetting process, but in the end they did endorse me, and largely, I mean, really 2 reasons. Number one is certainly my 25 years as a trial attorney, but secondly, because I don't have any previous political experience. And one of my main messages to the delegates is you really need to understand what a judge does. And it's not the delegates' fault, they really didn't understand what a judge does. And so naturally they were thinking about one of the 2 candidates whose names they knew, whose voting records they knew from the legislature, and I understand that, but I just said, I appreciate what they've done in the legislature, but it's just really critical that we get somebody in there that has experience, because as we talked about before, experience is critical. And of course I share the conservative values of the party, as the other candidates did. But in the end, I was able to connect with them on that, and they endorsed me.
Okay. So that's some of the process of how you got there, and then some of the dynamics of the 10th Judicial District. And before I interrupted you, we were talking about the Tea Party. And well, at this judicial forum, there was 14 candidates there.
Yes.
And I was pretty impressed with a number of them. I was very surprised because I just didn't know these type of people existed that actually believed in the Constitution. But also there were some there I was very, whoa, these people are running for judge? I can't believe that. But you did stand out. But you were going to make some comments about that forum.
Well, a couple of things. The comment I was going to make before is that one of the candidates actually said that the Constitution should change with the mores of society.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
I was frankly shocked by that. But the second thing I want to say, and I'm not talking about any candidate specifically, but in an election time, really every candidate's going to say, I'll uphold the Constitution, I'll apply the laws as written by the legislature. I'm not going to be a judicial activist.
And you have to swear an oath to that anyway.
And yet, we know that there are judges that do that.
Right.
And so, there's a disconnect somewhere between what is said during the election process and what actually happens when people are on the bench. So I guess my point is, it's easy to say, it's a popular thing to say, but I think people really need to, the voters really need to try to get as much information as they can about the candidates to really see what's behind the words and see what the substance is.
Yeah. One of the issues that's coming up today, and it really has nothing to do with being a judge because you really don't have any say over it, you're just one vote. It may have to, well, to me it goes to character and stuff like that, but there's a constitutional amendment out there to take away the people's right to vote for judge. Give them retention elections, but basically make the judicial seat always an appointed seat. And then you can vote somebody out, but then once you vote them out, the governor would then appoint them, the judge again.
Can I just, it's called merit selection and retention, merit selection and retention election.
That's what it's called, but I call it something else. So I've taken away your right to vote, constitutional right to vote for a judge. That's what I call it. So
some people call it, it's the acronym is MSRE, some people call it misery.
Misery, well, yeah.
I've heard that. So a commission picks candidates, and then they're appointed, and then after that, once they're a judge, the only vote is on whether they're retained or not.
Right.
There's no opponent.
Right.
And
it's called an election, though, but it's not.
It's not an election.
It's
the judges
actually malpractice to use the word election in that, in my opinion.
And the judges are graded by a panel of people
that are appointed
on
by
their
the
performance.
Governor and the Supreme Court and whoever.
And then they So then they give the grade, and then there's just an election, or not an election, excuse me, there's a vote on whether they're retained or not.
Right.
So it would completely take away